Rainmaker Rankings for August 15th, 26. All right, so just as a reminder, what we're doing here is I'm tracking whether the actions of Oregon leaders and organizations are making Oregon easier to work, live, and raise a family in, harder. So you get a +1 if you a positive step, +2 if it's a strong action, 3 if it's a major Rainmaker action, and then minus points for harmful actions. And like the general rubric, but obviously I can work on making it a little bit more rigorous in the future, but that's what it is for now. The scores are currently they're from July 26th through August 15th, so that's the last weeks. I have it back through June, but as you can see on my scoring events page, but I'm still at the kinks on how I score people and why I score people, so I'll probably that date later once I'm more firm on how I'm planning on doing these rankings. So anyway, so this is the all-time rankings from the 3 weeks. We got Tina Kotek at the top with a +4 based on 3 articles, Ron Wyden with a +3 based on 2 articles, and so on and so on. We got Trump at the bottom, Trump administration with a -9. And then you can see my methodology on the public Google sheet, which is here. And so I have every single article is in here, a link to it, who was scored, why they were scored. So that's the transparency I'm providing. And then this tab is just a summary of each week that you see on the website. And then this one is the overall rankings. And it has some additional context to it. It's got all this extra stuff, explains like who is, who they represent, just so you can keep track of everything. And it's mostly so I can keep track of everything because it's a complicated world out there. All right, so anyway, so that's the overall rankings. And then this week's is, so some of the articles, I score every article. I think I scored 17 this week, but every article, I don't make a social post and a video for every article because I don't have time. So I think this week I did 10. And it'll just sort of be as I have time to do them, then I'll do them. But yeah, if not a picture, a video, I'll still put my explanation for why I gave them a score. So Ron Wyden got a +2 because he got a bill passed that would help wildfire survivors lessen taxes. So it's hard to do. Still waiting for Trump's signature on that one. This one, the Urban League of Portland, that helped create 62 affordable homes for Portland seniors. So that's a positive +1 action. An EV company, OpConnect, they got a +1 for expanding their manufacturing in Portland instead of moving to Oregon. Dan Rayfield got a point for suing to protect interest payments owed to Oregon homeowners. Trump got a -1 for issuing an executive order that changes the vaccination schedule for children. The sheriff Ward got a -3 for blocking efforts to look into his actions, which he's refusing to hand over the financials for the sheriff department for the last 3 years. And the Curry County commissioners are trying to force him to do that. So +2 for them. These 4 city councilors are some of the only politicians at any level in state, city, county that are actively trying to get a better deal for the taxpayers. The rest of them seem kind of like rubber stamps. For the Blazers, so +1 for them, protecting public money. The Hermiston City Council got a +1 for approving a plan to remove forever chemicals from their drinking water. Megan Moyer got a +1 for pushing back against Jessica Vega Peterson's what I guess poor judgment selecting the Moda County negotiator. So she chose Blazers, a former Blazers employee and someone who's currently lobbying the Oregon government on behalf of the Blazers to be the negotiator for Multnomah County, which seems like an incredible conflict of interest. The Oregon Authority got a -1 for firing the leader they just hired a month ago for the Oregon State Hospital, and it's been so much turnover there. Trump administration gets a -1 for scrapping a transparency rule designed to expose shell companies and money laundering. Not great. Clackamas County get a +1 for beginning the process to pause data centers. and that started on August 13th, Paul Savas said. Quanta Services is a +1 for redirecting their crews and equipment to fight Oregon border wildfires. The City of Portland and the Portland Permitting and Development Department get a +1 for approving building permits unusually quickly. Oregon State University gets a +1 for winning $5 million to workers for Oregon manufacturers. Providence Health gets a +1 for investing $76 million to add 96 badly needed hospital beds. And lastly, Maxine Dexter gets a +1 for making an unannounced ICE detention center visit, pressing for answers. So what you can see here, what I'm trying to do is to provide some sort of public accountability of not just who are, talking a big game, people who actually do things to make the lives of people who live in Oregon better or worse, and that's what I'm attempting to track here. My rubric I use will probably become a little more rigorous over time, but this is what I do now. So that is the recap of the week, and next up will be the shorts, the little videos I've created that deep dives into individual articles. So see you next week. +2 for Ron Wyden for passing a bill that could help wildfire survivors pay less taxes. So Ron Wyden is our longest serving senator. He's been in there for 30 years. He has 2 more years to go. He is 77 years old, so I hope this is his last term, but you never know with these guys. So what happened was he got a bill to pass the Senate after it already passed the House, and if you're in the minority, which he is, that's always a big accomplishment. So it's a +2 instead of a +1. And what this bill would do if Trump signs it into law is it would basically take, so if you lost your property or your house and any of the uninsured or uncovered property losses, those would be non-taxable. And then also any disaster settlement payments are non-taxable. So if for some reason you got a big payout from PG&E for $200,000, typically you'd have to pay federal tax on that amount. And now if Trump signs this into law, then you won't. Now you're not going to have to pay taxes on it. So that's nice. This could definitely help people impacted by wildfires save a little money by paying less in taxes, and it's definitely worth a +2 for Senator Wyden. Appreciate his good work on this one. All right, -1 for the Trump administration and RFK Jr. for pushing unsupported changes to the vaccine schedule. And so this is based off of this article here that Trump is signing an executive order that aims to reshape the guidance around childhood vaccines, basically recommending that they should be spaced out in more visits, which probably has a likely effect that just more kids would not get vaccinated if they don't just do it all at once, because it's hard to get your kids to the doctor. This is just an executive order, so it doesn't force anyone to do anything differently. It just changes the federal recommendations. States can still recommend or do whatever they want, and then the article highlights a few GOP people who are saying this is a bad idea, as it definitely is, and you wonder why is the president and RFK trying to undermine public health when they could be doing something to fix the economy or something. But and then from the Oregon perspective, let's see. All right, so for the 2025-2026 year, Oregon's rate of non-medical exemptions was a high of 10% of kids going to school did not have vaccines, up from 7% in 5 years ago. So saying only 85% of kindergartners are up to date on required vaccines, which is not great. And there has been outbreaks of measles in Oregon, and whooping cough. And you're just like, these things were defeated a long time ago, but people like RFK is, I don't know, undermining public health. So anyway, -1 for these guys. If it was some sort of mandate, it would be a worse score, but it's just an executive order, so it's just a -1. -3 for Sheriff John Ward for blocking efforts to look into his action. +2 for the Curry County Commissioners for trying to hold the sheriff accountable. So this one is from the article by Nigel Jackwis called Above the Law at the Oregon Journalism Project. It's incredibly long, but it's very, very well done, so I would recommend reading the whole thing. So Curry County it's in the southern part of Oregon, bordering California. And the sheriff there is this man, John Ward, with his nice looking dog. And why is he getting a -3? Basically, the reason is that in COVID, Curry County got a lot of money from the pandemic. And so they hired 50 more people. And then after the pandemic money went away, they need to get rid of these people. And so the county commissioners wanted to put forth a bond to ask people, hey, can you keep funding the sheriff department? And so then they asked John Ward, can you give us the financials so we can bolster our case to the public about why we need the money? And he refused to ever provide the financials. And so that's primarily why he's getting the -3. And so eventually the county commissioners, they put their bond forward, it failed. And then they actually sued him to force him to release the financials. A court ruled in their favor 1 year later, and still he defied the court order. He has not released any financials. So that's the primary reason why he's getting the -3, but there are a bunch of other negative dings on his record that the article details. And I can show you some of them here. So one of them is the Oregon State Marine Board pays the Sheriff's Department $182,000 a year to patrol the river and inspect boats, and there's evidence that that has not been happening. They've just been collecting the money. They have uncertified police dogs, which is a liability. If those untrained canines were to injure someone, you could be sued and you'd lose the lawsuit. There is a deputy who shot multiple people in Gold Beach and has yet to be disciplined, which is rare for a small town. The county commissioners hired a private investigator to look into the sheriff because he's disobeying the court order. 2, they asked the Oregon Department of Justice to look into him, and they said they're not going to. They said whatever he's doing is not criminal, so we're not going to do anything about it. And so they hired their own private investigator, and this guy turned up. In fact, sheriff has property on his private property, basically the shed here. So a nonprofit gave the sheriff department a bunch of money, and they use it to buy equipment and a building to store the equipment in. But the trouble is the building is on the sheriff's land, and the deed for the building, his name is not in the county's name. So these are some of the issues with the sheriff. But he still continues to keep winning his elections. The last one, he got 60% of the vote and appears to be pretty popular, even though the rep, Court Boyce, the longest serving rep in the Oregon House of Representatives, says he should, all the county commissioners currently say he should resign, but constituents still, it appears, continue to support him. So, -3 for failing to turn over the sheriff's department, not his personal department, it is the public's department, and the public deserves to see how their tax dollars are being spent. All right, +1 for Angelita Murillo, Candace Alvaros, Mitch Green, Tiffany Koyama Lane for demanding a better Moda deal for taxpayers. So this one, it's based off of this event, which was the Portland City Council voted to approve Moda Center term sheets to kick off negotiations with the Blazers with an 8-4 vote, and these 4 people were the only people voting against. And while the term sheet is more just let's start negotiations, nothing has been finalized or approved, it's just been pretty disappointing that the state legislature committed $300 million of state taxpayer money, and then the county committed over $100 million, and then the city is committing another $120 million for the Blazers without really extracting any concessions out of the Blazers or Tom Dundon. So we just got to give these 4 city councilors a point for attempting to have some sort of accountability around how public dollars should be funded, instead of just giving away $600 million in money to Dundon and the Blazers. So, and then Mitch Green and had a little webinar with 2 sports economists. We're showing that, comparing the proposed Blazers deal and how it was not really living up to comps. And so see where it ends up, but just wish more of the what appears to be in the public interest instead of what is in corporations' interest. It's true Portland would really suffer if the Blazers were to leave. London, since he's taken control of the team, has been like incredible cheapskate, firing tons of people, not paying for like things that players would typically get. And there's most likely going to be a $1 billion relocation fee he'd have to pay in order to move to a different pay to the NBA. And so he's a very unlikely person to pay that amount. So please play hardball, politicians, and stop giving so many concessions is my thing. So that's why I give a +1 to for people here. All right, -1 for Jessica Vega Peterson, Multnomah County Chair, and +1 for Megan Moyer, Multnomah County Commissioner. And this is for displaying poor judgment in selecting the county's Moda Center negotiator, and +1 for demanding greater scrutiny on the negotiator for Megan Moyer. She's the only commissioner who voted no. So what happened is Vega Peterson, so Multnomah County is a little strange in that the chair of the Board of Commissioners is not just a commissioner who can vote. They're also the chief executive officer, so they can sign off on some government contracts if it's less than $250,000. And she hired this negotiator, Chris Oxley, former Trailblazers executive Chief Oxley, and who's also board of a nonprofit who is currently lobbying state leaders to give the $600 million to the Blazers. So any normal person would say this is an incredible conflict of interest. And that's what Megan Moyer said. She said, I'm sorry, did I mishear? We hired a negotiator that's on the board of an organization that's lobbying us on this issue. That is a loud conflict of interest. And other board members also were perturbed, but they voted for it in the end. Why? I don't know. If they really felt strong, they should have voted against it like Megan did. Then Vega Peterson, she says all this stuff about Chris, how he's not going to be a conflict of interest, even though he's worked for the Blazers for like years and is currently lobbying the state to give money to the Blazers, which is completely insane. And let's see, Multnomah County will pay him $5,000 a month to hammer out the agreement, which be $60,000, and so it's under the limit that Peterson has to. It's under $250,000 contract. It has to go through the formal procurement process, but because of that, there's more leeway in what she can do. You are supposed to consider at least 3 other candidates when offering contracts, and she says she considered other candidates, but she didn't say who they were. So this is just bad governance. It reeks of corruption and conflict of interest, and it's just really shameful, honestly, that just looks like all the Oregon politicians, except for the few on the city council, are really just doing what's in the best interest of and not the so -1 for Jessica Vega Peterson, +1 for Megan Moyer. +1 for the Clackamas County Commissioners began the process to pause data centers. So on August 11th, they had a vote to, all 5 of them voted together that they're going to begin the process of having a moratorium on new data center applications. But you have to give the state 45 days notice before having a public hearing and adopting a moratorium. And I couldn't find anywhere if after that August 11th vote, if they did actually start the clock or not. So that part's unclear, but it is a +1 in the fact that the process is getting going, and some of the commissioners, specifically Diana Helm, who the prior month said that we should have data centers in Clackamas County, has changed her tune, and all 5 of them agree that we should have a moratorium on data centers in Clackamas County, which makes me happy. That's where I live, so I am happy for this development. +1 for them. +1 for Quanta Services for redirecting their crews and heavy equipment to fight Oregon wildfires. So for this one, Quanta Services is building an electrical line from Boardman to Hemingway. So up here in Oregon, Boardman, Oregon, past Pendleton, past LaGrande, past Baker City, past and into Idaho, connecting the Northwest Power Grids and the Idaho Power Grid. I think they can electricity back and forth if there's the peaks, because apparently Idaho has peak electricity demand in the summertime and when they're doing all their irrigation and AC running, and Northwest electricity peaks in the wintertime because it's colder here. Idaho is also super cold, so I don't really get how that works, but supposedly it's pass electricity back and forth between the two systems. And so that's what Quanta Services was doing in the area. And then, as you know, there's been really bad wildfires in Idaho and Oregon. And so the company Quanta Services and their subsidiaries, they help fight the wildfires with bulldozers, trucks, road blading equipment to help prep the area for the firefighting crews. And so that's pretty remarkable for private company to devote their workers and their equipment to public firefighters fire. So that's pretty amazing, and there's no indication that Quanta Services was paid at all, so pretty impressive, and that's why we're giving them a +1. +1 for the city of Portland Permitting and Development for approving building permits unusually quickly. All right, so for this one, the James Beard Public Market secured a building permit for a downtown space, and the architect said that they've never seen, in 30 years of doing projects in Portland, they've never seen such a fast permitting process. So for that, we're giving them a +1 because that permitting department has had a notoriously bad time. I've scored 2 prior articles on them where one of them was they are restarting their task force to study construction permit delays because the average approval, it takes 455 business days, so well over, that could be 2 years if it's by business days, not calendar days. And then another article where the short-term rental fees are some of the highest in the nation, and there's some stories about people who are having medical debt, so they rent out a room in their house to Airbnb, and then they don't have the right zoning, and so they owe the city $96,000 in fees. They have to take out second mortgages, and just all these horror stories. So the permitting department for the city of Portland has so far only been scoring very poorly, and so if they do something right, we'll give them a positive score, which they seem to have done in this case. And so this public market, what it appears to be, so it's in downtown Portland near the courthouse and a few blocks from the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall. And it's going to be a year-round market with goods from local farmers, artisans, and chefs. So the idea is really cool. And they have a lot of public money getting put into it. So a nonprofit was the one that purchased this market. I think it was 3 years ago. No, they bought it in January 2025 for $3 million. And then they have $10 million from the state of Oregon, the legislature gave them. And then another couple million from Prosper Portland, which is the economic development arm. So they're getting a ton of public money to build this downtown public market, which is good in concept, but that could be the reason why the architect had never seen such fast permitting in Portland. It could just because the legislature, the city are all heavily invested in seeing this project work, and so that's why the different departments actually, got together and gave a quick permit this time. But if they can do it for something they care about, they could probably do it for everyone else. So here's hoping, but in this situation, we'll just give them a +1 for doing it right this time. +1 for Providence Health for adding 96 badly needed hospital beds. So Oregon has one of the lowest rates of hospital beds per person in the country at 1.6 beds per 1,000 residents. The national average is 2.3, so we're half of the national average. We would need about 3,000 new hospital beds to get to the national average, and so Providence adding about 100 new beds is meaningful. It's about closes the gap by about 3%. And so that's this article here in the Portland Business Journal. And there was another article as well about Providence this week that was not scored, and this was the one where they're shuttering their health insurance arm, and they were attempting to find a national carrier to take over their private version of Medicare, but they were unable to do that. And so anyone who has health insurance through Providence is going to have to find a new health insurance carrier going forward. And I didn't score them because if a company is saying that health insurance is not a profitable business for them to offer and they don't want to do it, I'm not going to penalize them for doing so, even though it will be bad for the customer not to have health insurance. But of course, as we all know, private health insurance is really terrible and should be illegal. So if the health insurance arm of Providence is going to be no longer, that's totally fine. We're one step closer to not having private insurance in America, and we can just have a public option. Not a public option, just the only health insurance provider is the government, and the individual hospital can continue to run, like Kaiser's, the Providences. So expanding hospital bed capacity is great. But yeah, we'd like to get to a place where health insurance, private health insurance, is not legal and only public health insurance is. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. +1 for Maxine Dexter for making an unannounced ICE detention center visit, pressing for answers. So Maxine Dexter is our federal representative representing Gresham, Mount Hood, East Portland area. She's been in office for 2 years. It'll be 2 years in November. She's up for re-election. And she heard about a strike going on at the Tacoma ICE detention facility, which is the closest detention facility to Oregon and where the majority of people rounded up by ICE in Oregon get sent to. And Geo Group is the people who run this prison, and the private company, private prison contractor that's publicly traded. So if you can figure out a way to boycott them, go for it. So she showed up to the detention center in Tacoma with another federal rep from, and they tried to get a tour. First they rebuffed, then they did eventually get a tour. You're supposed to give 7 days notice apparently. Yeah, she got in, saw the kitchen and a few other things, and then I guess she didn't really get that much out of it, but as someone who's in the minority party, you know so much you can do, and so doing things like this, unannounced visits, and attempt to hold ICE accountable is valuable action, I would say. So that's why I gave her +1 in this situation. So